Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Cristy.
Yes, I don't know where this question should be directed to, either Dr. Garcia or Mr. Huckleberry, but I want first to confirm something. Looking at the county website under the reporting for the ability to file a complaint about a business not being in compliance with the regulations, I just want to confirm that the county states that it does not pursue or investigate anonymous complaints. Is that correct?
Mr. Huckleberry. Dr. Garcia.
So the practice of the health department and the practice of a lot of health departments is to follow up on every single complaint, whether it is anonymous or not. The actions taken by the health department typically reflect only those complaints that have been validated, whether or anonymous or not. So our actions only reflect validated complaints.
Well, I think if you go to the website and the page for filing complaints, there is a statement that says that the county the health department will not investigate anonymous complaints.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, I think the key is if it's truly anonymous, meaning that there's no one attached to it and no one will give a name or any information that can be followed up, then there's no way to investigate.
Okay, I'm looking at the site right now, and it does make references that the county will not investigate anonymous complaints, which I think is fine. My point of these questions are, how do you verify the identification of someone who complains as being a legitimate individual who actually exists and is complaining? What's the process there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Cristy, every complaint that's attached to either an email address or a phone number receives a follow-up call from the county. It's either my office or the public health agency, so there is verification that the complaint was made, and the purpose of the call or the email contact is to gain additional information that might help in the investigation.
Well, I appreciate that. I think the issue that the community is experiencing right now is on the enforcement side, and clearly there is a great deal of controversy, confusion, and consternation by businesses being forced to comply with inspection codes. They have identified a number of areas with the enforcement side. For instance, inexperienced inspectors from the health department. Many of the Pima County health inspectors seem to be newly hired and unaware of the laws and applications of those laws. This just adds to the confusion. There is now the perception that there is selective enforcement, that some establishments have received multi-inspections while others have not had one. And this creates that mistrust and that confusion in the business community as well. And the businesses are already adversely affected, particularly most restaurants and bars who have needed to spend money on increased cleanliness protocol and extra staff, while at the same time they are required to operate and with reduced guests. So clearly there are flaws in the enforcement system. There are areas that need to be revisited and refined and brought back into focus and discussion. And I think the most controversial and the issues filled with the most animosity-provoking items between the county and private businesses are the face mask requirement violations and the business and community violations, which are on the county website. And at this time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion I would like to move that the following 2 pages on Pima County's website be removed and terminated. The first page is the face mask requirement violation, and the second page is the business and community violations.
I will second that, but I have some comments and possibly some additions.
Supervisor Miller?
I'm in agreement with Supervisor Cristy, and I think the issue comes from, and I know we had a long discussion about this at the time when the rules were set up regarding anonymous reporting, because there are legal implications here for these businesses, and they have a right to meet their accuser and cross-examine their accuser. And so that's the anonymous thing. We agreed up front, which I believe is why it's on the website, that there would be no anonymous complaints. I'm still hearing issues with folks being attacked on social media. And we discussed this in the last board meeting, and it all comes back to the wall of shame and the fact that there are individuals out there who are targeting certain businesses and constantly filing complaints because they want to either drive that person out of business, or they're targeting them for their religious beliefs or political beliefs. And this is out there, and it's been getting louder and louder. And one of the businesses that contacted me, that they told me that they have had 11 or 12 inspectors visits, and that some of those inspectors stay there for 3 to 4 hours on their site, from a minimum of about an hour to 3 to 4 hours. That's pretty heavy-handed. I think, going out and observing is fine, but when you're spending 3 to 4 hours at a business, that's half of their business day. And it also isn't giving the public a real good feeling about what's going on here. I don't know if these people go in with name tags and badges that say they're from the Pima County Health Department or not. And I also heard the same thing that Supervisor Cristy is hearing, is that there are a lot of new and people doing the enforcement that do not understand the rules, and they're having to make calls back, which is fine to get clarification, but it's causing a lot of confusion. And one of the things I was told yesterday was that if you have a party of 10 coming into a restaurant, that none of them can be seated until all 10 of them are there. I did not know that. I thought if I got there, with a couple of my friends and I was meeting other people, that I could go ahead, get the table, and then people could come in. I don't think the restaurant would have any way of knowing that you have 10 people coming in. So I think that makes that very difficult, that they have to be doing this type of enforcement when, there's all these questions about how we're executing. The other thing that I think would help this situation tremendously and actually aid and assist these businesses is to get rid of the wall of shame altogether. Keep that an internal document for the health department to use. And instead of allowing these people to continue to target these businesses. And we saw in the last meeting what an unfortunate situation that created, because this individual is so stressed out. And they were getting death threats. They were, the young lady that was there to testify, she was threatened with rape. And this all stems from this wall of shame. So I would like to, I definitely support that we eliminate that, maybe keep it internally for the health department to use. And also, I think we need a lot more education for our enforcement people, because I've heard this from numerous different businesses, that one will come out and tell them one thing, and then they say, wait a minute, we were told this, and then they have to make a call back. So it's creating a lot of confusion. So I would like to see, more education of the enforcement people. And And let's just end this wall of shame, because who is it serving? It's serving a group of vindictive individuals who want to, for whatever reason, and whether it's religious reasons, whether it's political reasons, it is discrimination, and it's assisting in that discrimination against these restaurant owners. And they also feel very targeted, that there are such a very long list of rules against for restaurants and bars. While we heard the gentleman testify earlier that he had a business, it was a speedway, and he didn't even know there were any requirements for them. So I think there's a case to be made that there is a lot more enforcement against restaurants and bars than there is against any other sector of the population. And I would like to hear from the county attorney on that one.
Mr. Chairman, may
Thank
I make a point of clarification on my motion?
Supervisor Cristy?
Just so everybody's clear on the motion, I'm asking for the removal of the face mask requirement, the violations page. That is known as the wall of shame. And the second item that I'm asking to be removed and terminated from the Pima County website, the business and community violations, that's known as the snitch line. So just to back up what Supervisor Miller is saying, and it has also been noted that there are the same businesses on both the violations and on the ones that have passed the inspections. We've got a number of businesses that are on both lists and have remained on those lists. So clearly, these wall of shame and the snitch line need to be completely removed, and this is part of the enforcement issue that is roiling the community, and it's even gotten more confusing when you see the same business on both lists. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion before us. Is there any further comments or questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Roll call, please, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Bronson?
No.
Supervisor Cristy?
Yes.
Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
Supervisor Villegas? No. Chairman Valadez?
No. By your vote of 2 to 3, motion fails. Are there any further comments?
Chairman?
Supervisor Cristy.
In light of the failure of the motion to pass, I would like to make another motion to address the items that I discussed earlier about the business community and the restaurant community having mixed messages, and the issues that are being driven by the enforcement side that really need to be completely reanalyzed, revisited, redefined. So I would like to move that the Board of Supervisors direct the Pima County Health Department to revisit and address current restaurant inspection and enforcement procedures, as there is a need to clarify policy and improve the inspection process so the current issues and confusion that is being experienced by the restaurant business community and other businesses can be avoided and quickly ended.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Miller.
I'd like to get my issues addressed if we're, as Supervisor Cristy is making a motion.
Supervisor Miller?
The clarification.
He's made a motion. Would you like to second the motion?
I will second the motion, but I would like to add the things that I brought up as well, and I will go through that list. I would like to add that we do a significant amount of training for the new enforcement people. I would like to add that we clarify and end anonymous complaints, because I'll go back and pull the video. We had a tremendous amount of discussion on this, And we agreed, as is defined on the website, that anonymous complaints would not be accepted. So I'd like a response on that now from either the health department or the county attorney. Don't these people have a right to know who is complaining against them?
Counsel.
And if you want me to wait until after the motion, I will, and we want to vote on that first, that's fine, I can do that.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and do that, Supervisor Miller, and I'm going to ask counsel to please address some of the issues you brought up. Counsel.
Mr. Chairman, before we make a vote on the motion, is there an opportunity for Supervisor Miller to make any friendly amendments to my motion?
Tell you what, I've been trying to get an answer to the question she keeps asking, but if you could please let counsel answer the questions, and then I'll let her proceed, okay?
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I understand the question, it is whether there is a right to know the identity of the complainant. The answer is no.
All right, Supervisor Miller.
So the discussion that we had where there are legal actions that can be taken against these businesses, they have no right to know who is filing a complaint against them?
Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Miller, there is not a right to know who the complainant is. The complaint initiates an investigation by the health department, and actions only taken based on validated complaints, meaning the investigation has validated the complaint. So that's the due process that's provided, and that satisfies any applicable legal requirement.
Supervisor Miller.
I would like to go back to the fact that we had a significant discussion on this and agreed that we would not be accepting anonymous complaints. As it is, Supervisor Cristy pointed out, it is defined on the website. So what are we going to do to eliminate confusion here? Mr. Huckleberry, I guess that would go to.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I think the confusion basically eliminates itself. In a previous update report, I think I reported that we had received something like 1,500 complaints, and that I think found only about 40 of them valid, and then only acted on about 20. So you can see the ratio is pretty obvious. It's almost impossible for us to follow up on an anonymous complaint, and you know, because there's no one to verify anything. So, you know, if the board wants to say don't follow up on anonymous complaints, we probably don't. We don't do it anyway because there's no one to contact. I think the main point.
So then why don't we eliminate it?
Main point is that we'll listen to any concern that gets expressed to us, whether or not and we'll assess it whether it has any validity. And I can tell you that typically anonymous complaints exclusively fall into the no action category.
But what you're telling me is that we will follow up on anonymous complaints.
Mr. Chairman, we will look at every complaint that comes across our desk.
Then I suggest we change the website to reflect what we're doing, that we will follow up on anonymous complaints, because Supervisor Cristy just pointed out that the website says we do not follow up on anonymous complaints.
If Supervisor Miller would like to include that in my motion, I'd be most willing to allow that.
Yes, I would. And I would also like to ask that the health department and the county administration examine why this wall of shame. Why do we feel, and I don't know if somebody has the answer there right now, why do we feel that this is an important function to put people's names up there, restaurant names up there, and leave them up there and allow them to be targeted? Because that is what is happening. They are being targeted. It played out in last week's board meeting. You saw individuals being threatened physically. And I don't understand the purpose of this. I don't understand what we as a county are trying to accomplish. Aren't we trying to assist the businesses, help them be in compliance, understand what our requirements are versus we want to put you up on a wall so that people can target you, make phone calls to your home, threaten you with rape. This is unacceptable, and I don't know why we would want to keep that up there in the public square when this kind of activity is happening against these businesses. And the health department or Mr. Huckleberry, I'll be happy if one of you could answer that. What is the purpose of this quote wall of shame?
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if you recall, it was actually placed in I believe the resolution or the policies that dealt with the iterative process that went back and forth with members primarily of the Restaurant Association. Initially, there were monetary penalties and fines, and those were all deleted to basically go to education. First violation, education. Second violation, education. Third violation of the same, and I think you have to read it very carefully, the same exact issue. And if in fact you found a third violation, the remedy was, and the board approved, that you would publicly disclose the violation and the name of the firm or the violator, because it was in, I believe, the opinion of both the staff and I think the board in enacting the requirement, that the public had a right to know what the potential exposure was to COVID-19 or the probability of being infected in an institution or a restaurant or a business that had a disregard for the same disregard for conditions that have been designed to minimize the infection rate and spread of COVID-19.
And if we'll recall, part of that was a discussion with the Arizona Restaurant Association as well as other restaurants, and it was a compromise because originally there were, as Mr. Huckleberry said, potential both fiscal and civil penalties, which this board decided to do away with, but this was the compromise.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to again reiterate that I'm looking right now on the website. There are two businesses. One is, both of them are both on the Ready for You list, and both of them are on the Wall of Shame list. And I think this needs to be analyzed and responded to as well. How can this happen? Where is all the confidence building that this whole enforcement system is supposed to be producing in the business community and in the general community when you have two examples of two businesses being on both lists?
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it is possible that they can, because they have maybe passed an inspection by the health agency and received the Ready for You certificate, and then based on the investigation of subsequent complaints with an investigation by the health inspector found to be in violation, and that violation occurring multiple times, and then they are in fact then listed on the webpage as pursuant to the resolution, and it is then the Ready for You certificate is taken down in a subsequent week.
I would have to disagree with that analysis because these two businesses have been on both lists for many weeks, and I think your response to this issue just illustrates and is indicative of the situation in the community of confusion and unfairness, and that obviously the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing in the health department on these issues, and this is why there needs to be a complete reformation of the enforcement policies and procedures. There needs to be clarity and transparency in how the enforcement procedures are conducted, and obviously with the response in the restaurant community and the general public, it's not working what we're doing, and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be analyzed. It needs to be brought back to this board, and it needs to have the discussion of all parties concerned right away, because the next meeting we have could be a death sentence for many of these businesses, because it could be an eternity as far as them trying to stay in business until the next time we meet. So that is the force of my motion, that this be analyzed and reviewed immediately and brought to the Board of Supervisors so we can clarify these actions that make no sense and that create confusion, and the boiling point in the community and in the businesses is reaching the point where these kinds of issues are going to create even more issues, unintended consequences.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Miller, let me ask Dr. Garcia to please respond to some of the training issues that have been brought up for some of the inspectors, because I think we need to kind of really flush out that point a little bit. Dr. Garcia?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, indeed, we have increased the number of people within the health department that are devoted to this function. That has been one of the challenges that we faced. We've done this in response to the increased need for those kinds of inspections and services. I'll remind the board that until they gave us this direction, we did not really have the infrastructure to conduct these types of inspections in the way that they were envisioned. Our inspectors, our environmental health services workers, are actually very well trained. They are certified, and in fact there are several levels of sophistication. We maintain a very high degree of a very high training standard. Folks are actually have their supervisors do their inspections with them when they are newly hired and for a period of time. I cannot remember if it's 3 months or 6 months, and I have a great deal of confidence in them. Now, please understand that part of what we've been dealing with here is a changing landscape in terms of what the state's expectation is of what our health department should and should not do in this space. The expectation from the governor and from the State Department of Health has been a shifting landscape that we have had to respond fairly acutely to. So yes, that has led at times to misinterpretations or confusion on the part of the way that, perceived confusion on the part of the way that we are implementing these things. But it is not arbitrary, nor is it done in a punitive fashion. Our inspectors work ultimately to get to yes with operators, even bad operators, even operators who persistently are troublesome. We try very, very hard to get to yes with them, because we believe it is in the public health best interest that operators be operating reasonably and within certain standards. So we bend over backwards, in fact, to try to get to yes, and sometimes that we're not able to get there.
All right, Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Miller.
I guess what I think this gets back to, when I look at these metrics, I think, how do you set up metrics for success? And I'm talking about success of all parties involved. And what I'm seeing, and by putting up this wall of shame and putting people on these various lists, it's our failure. It's Pima County's failure to either communicate effectively, to educate effectively, to assist. Because I don't think we should be in a punitive role, and that's exactly what's happening here. And especially with the situation of certain individuals in the community that want to penalize these businesses. There are some people out there, we all know it. We heard the gentleman read those comments in the boardroom. And Dr. Garcia just said the landscape is constantly shifting. So with that in mind, I would really appreciate if we could go back and really look at this and say, is this the appropriate way to be doing this? And what I'm seeing is we all talked about the shifting landscape. We talked about the shifting requirements, very confusing for everybody, but we're unwilling to go back. This board is unwilling to go back and reevaluate. What is the issue with not, taking a second look? Reevaluating this, I don't understand why there's so much resistance. It sounds like a very penalty-driven environment to me when we're unwilling to even look at our own policies and procedures and say, maybe we could do some tweaking here. Dr. Garcia says the enforcement folks are very highly trained. I assume there is some good training. However, these businesses are reporting back time and time again that individuals come out and tell them something different than the last person that went out to visit their site. And I think a good thing for these businesses to start doing when they're asking these questions is to start holding up a video camera to prove it, because no one on this board is willing to trust that they're giving us honest feedback. So are we going to ask these businesses, I would advise them, put a video camera up when the inspector comes in and record what they're telling you so that we can prove it to this board that we need to go back and look at them. I don't understand the resistance, and I'd like someone that is resistant to this to explain why you're unwilling to go back and take a look. We'll come back and convene it and say, whether we agree with it or not, but why are you unwilling to even take a look?
All right, there's a motion.
Is that the sound of crickets that I'm hearing?
Supervisor Cristy, would you please restate your motion
It
again?
appears to be.
Supervisor Cristy, would you please restate your motion so that we can go ahead and be very clear what the motion does?
My motion, and it's open for friendly amendments, is that I move that the Board of Supervisors direct the Pima County Health Department to revisit and address current restaurant inspection and enforcement procedures, as there is a need to clarify policy and improve the inspection process so the current issues that we are now discussing and the confusion that we are now experiencing can be avoided and quickly ended.
All right, that's the motion before us. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Roll call, please, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Bronson?
No.
Supervisor Cristy?
Yes.
Supervisor Miller? Lost her. Lost her.
Why don't we go back to her?
Supervisor Villegas?
No.
Chairman Valadez?
No. And let's see if Supervisor Miller is back. I didn't hear the ping though. Let's give it a moment.
Is there any attempt to contact Supervisor Miller? Maybe there was a connection.
Supervisor Miller?
Supervisor Miller? Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
We're taking a roll call vote.
Hello?
Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Supervisor
Hello?
Miller, can you hear us? Supervisor Miller?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you're up for your vote.
Supervisor Miller?
What was the motion? My phone hung up.
The motion is that I move that the Board of Supervisors direct the Pima County Health Department to revisit and address current restaurant inspection and enforcement procedures, as there is a need to clarify policy and improve the inspection process so the current issues that we are discussing and the confusion that we are experiencing can be avoided and quickly ended.
And would would you accept that we do this in conjunction with the business commission that is set up to work on
Supervisor
this?
Miller, that is out of order. The motion is, we're in the middle of a vote. It's either yay or nay. I'm sorry, I apologize for that, but Robert's rules dictate that the only response is either aye or nay.
Okay, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor Miller, and I apologize for interrupting. By your vote of a 2-3, motion fails. Supervisor Miller. Supervisor Miller?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to, as I was requesting earlier, request that we have staff analyze this, and I don't know why any member of the board isn't willing to allow this analysis to go forward and see if there are any issues. And so I would make a motion that we go back and ask the county staff to analyze these complaints that we're hearing from the restaurants and analyze our policies and procedures and come back to the board and make a recommendation.
Supervisor Miller, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, from Supervisor Christie's motion, that is duplicative. However, we may be... let me
we're
finish.
looking-
Supervisor Christie, let me finish. However, if you'd like, we can take that as staff direction, in which case it's not duplicative.
Okay, that would be fine if staff would go and look at this and analyze whether or not there are significant issues. And I really would like someone to address the fact that these restaurants are getting threatened by individuals in the community as a result of this wall of shame.
And that may I add to that, Supervisor Miller, that we receive that analysis and report back by the next board meeting.
Absolutely.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I think, we'll take that as staff direction, but we have always been available to examine any specific case, any specific set of facts that would lead one to conclude that we're not appropriately following the rules or doing the inspections properly. So I would request that Supervisor Cristy and Supervisor Miller, if you have specifics, please get those specifics to us and we will look at them.
Are there any further comments on item number 10? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 11, Board of Supervisors Policy number C6.3, Anti-Racketeering Revolving Fund. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, based on Mr. Huckleberry's memo, I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve item number 11. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Moving on to clerk of the board, item number 12.
Move the item.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item number 12. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Item number 13.
Move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item number 13. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Moving on to attractions and tourism, Titan Missile Museum Maintenance Project, item number 14. What's the will
Move
of the
the
board?
item.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item number 14. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Industrial Development Authority, item number 15, and resolution number 2020-78.
Move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item number 15 and resolution number 2020-78. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Transportation, items 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
Move the items.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve those items. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Hearings, franchises, licenses, and permits, items 24, 25, and 26.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no one in the audience to address us in these hearings, move to close the hearings and approve items 24, 25, and 26.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing and approve item 24, 25, and 26.
Hold on, she said they can't hear them. Supervisor, can't hear us?
Oh, my God.
Okay, they can't hear.
I thought they were being too quiet.
All right, you know what? We've been going at it a while. We're going to take a 10-minute recess while IT figures it out. We will return at the sound of the gavel.
You want him to try to reconnect?